Felt kind of left out. I felt kind of hurt when there was a meeting that we had one time, and everybody got a death row jacket, and I didn't get one.
Warren G, a rapper no one believed would survive in the world of hip-hop. He grew up surrounded by gangs. He carried a gun before the age of 18. He was once seen as lucky as a faded shadow of Dr. Dre. But look again. While the legendary death row empire collapsed, Tupac was murdered and Suge Knight went to prison. Warren G is still here holding on to the final legacy of G-Funk. The question is no longer, how lucky was Warren G? But rather, what did he do to survive when everyone else either fell or ended up behind bars? Warren G's life is not a chill record. It is a blood-soaked tragedy. Buckle up, because we are about to expose the darkest corners of Warren G's life. Long Beach, California. In the 1970s and 80s was not for the faint of heart. It was a pressure cooker of gangs, drugs, and police sirens tearing through the night. Warren G was born right in the center of that storm. He came into the world on November 10, 1970. 4 years later, the family fell apart. His parents divorced. In East Long Beach, Warren survived extreme poverty with his mother and 3 sisters. Imagine this, a child growing up not knowing what he would eat tomorrow, or whether stepping outside meant getting caught between 2 lines of gunfire. By his teenage years, Warren G stood dangerously close to the edge of Long Beach. He became involved with the streets, one of many kids growing up around violence, guns, and bad choices always waiting nearby. Then came the moment that changed everything. Warren G was arrested for possessing a firearm. At an age when many were still worrying about school tests, Warren G was forced to ask himself, if I keep going like this, will I even have a future? The fateful meeting that changed hip-hop history. At 12 years old, Warren was sent away like a piece of property, leaving his mother to live with his father and stepmother in North Long Beach. People assumed this was the end for a drifting kid, but no. It became a big bang moment in music history. In this new home, Warren did not just gain a new family. He walked into the living room and came face to face with a sharp-eyed teenager spinning records non-stop. His name was Andre Young. Later, the world would know him as Dr. Dre. Andre Young was Warren's stepbrother. At the time, no one believed this connection would make history. While kids their age outside were learning how to load a gun inside that small house, Dr. Dre began teaching Warren G how to load a beat. Dre forced Warren to sit in front of a drum machine. Dre taught him how to feel bass running down his spine. Dre made Warren write "Scream his pain" onto paper instead of releasing it on the streets. But do not mistake this for a touching brotherhood story. This was a brutal training ground. At that time, Warren G was nothing more than a background kid under a controlling genius. He had to learn how to survive inside his own home, watching Dr. Dre slowly become an icon, while he himself remained an unnamed shadow. After years spent standing in Dr. Dre's shadow, Warren G understood one thing very clearly. If he kept going alone, he would disappear. If he wanted to survive, he needed allies. 3 friends. 1 point of no return. The fateful meeting did not happen inside a studio. It began on dusty street corners and during freestyle rap battles among homeless kids. Warren G crossed paths with Snoop at Polytechnic High School. At the time, Snoop was a tall, lanky kid nicknamed Snoopy because his face resembled the cartoon dog. But inside, he was a real street figure affiliated with the Rollin' 20s Crips. They met while Snoop was standing on the sidewalk firing off rhymes. Warren was stunned by the way Snoop delivered his words, smooth like velvet, but sharp like a razor. Warren instantly knew it. This was the missing piece he had been looking for. The final piece appeared when Nate Dogg had just returned from the United States Marine Corps. Nate carried the quiet heaviness of a soldier and a powerful baritone voice. They met at the house of a mutual friend. When Nate began to sing instead of rap, Warren G froze. This was not cheap pop-style singing. It was the voice of someone who had walked straight out of hell. In 1990, no record label cared about these 3 poor black kids, so they built their own kingdom. The location was behind an old VCR repair shop called VIP Records in Long Beach. The owner let them use a small rundown room suffocatingly hot to record music. Warren G scraped together every dollar he could from selling illegal goods to buy a cheap mixing setup. They named the group 213, the area code of Long Beach at the time, to declare one thing: we represent this forgotten place. Inside that cramped hideout under dim lights, the three young men created a historic demo cassette. Snoop rapped, Nate sang the hooks, and Warren G shaped the sound. They recorded while constantly watching out for police raids. They knew this tape was their only lifeline. If it did not reach the hands of Big Brother Dr. Dre, all three would be stuck in Long Beach forever, or end their lives in a pool of blood on the sidewalk. Do you know how relentless Warren G had to be? He brought that tape to Dr. Dre dozens of times, only to be turned away because Dre was too busy building the NWA empire. Until one night at a party filled with guns and beautiful women, Warren G secretly swapped the tape inside Dre's music player. When Snoop's voice came through the speakers, the chaotic party suddenly went silent. Dr. Dre raised an eyebrow, dropped his drink to the floor, and asked, "Who is this? Bring him to me, immediately." But this is where the tragedy truly began. Cold-blooded betrayal. The very next morning, Dr. Dre and the violent giant Suge Knight summoned Snoop Dogg and Nate Dogg to the death row fortress. Warren G eagerly followed, believing the trio 213 was about to sign a deal of a lifetime together. But when the office door slammed shut, Warren G was left standing in the hallway. Inside, Suge Knight stared directly at Snoop, and Nate laid out thick stacks of cash and glossy contracts that were nothing more than chains. Suge spoke bluntly. "I need the kid with the snake-like rap voice, and the one with the angel voice. The one tagging along with you? Send him home. He doesn't have gangster presence. He's just riding along." Even more terrifying was Dr. Dre's reaction. Instead of standing up for the stepbrother who had delivered a gold mine to his doorstep, Dre stayed silent. Dre needed Suge Knight's protection to build his own empire, and he was willing to sacrifice Warren G for stability. In a single afternoon, group 213 collapsed in shock. Snoop and Nate were swept into a whirlwind of fame, luxury cars, and wild death row parties. Warren G stood alone in the parking lot watching his two closest brothers drive away, leaving him with empty pockets and a shattered heart. Warren G returned to Long Beach. Those who once feared him now mocked him. "So, how's it going? Genius. Your boys are becoming millionaires, and you're back here eating scraps." A silent counterattack and one final gamble. Warren G fell into such deep financial trouble that he had to pawn his last remaining music equipment just to eat. He sank into severe depression, watching Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg dominate the world with the album The Chronic, an album to which Warren G had contributed some of the earliest ideas yet received no credit. Warren later admitted he felt betrayed by his own blood. Dre's silence in the face of Suge Knight's pressure against Warren G became a psychological scar that would take years to heal. While death row was consumed by threats and street violence, Warren G quietly carved out a new path: Def Jam and the gamble against the current. Warren G decided to sign with Def Jam Recordings. At the time, many people in hip-hop believed he had just signed his own career death sentence. In the early 1990s, American hip-hop was clearly divided. The West Coast meant death row guns and power built on fear. The East Coast meant New York Def Jam, a label on the edge of collapse and largely unfamiliar with West Coast culture. West Coast artists did not go to New York. It was almost forbidden. So the question came immediately: West Coast going to Def Jam. The second question was even harsher: is he gangster enough? But Warren G did not choose Def Jam for fame. He chose Def Jam for control. After watching Snoop Dogg and Nate Dogg enter death row, Warren clearly saw the price of glory. At death row, artists could rise fast, but they did not own their destiny. Contracts were opaque, royalties unclear, and violence was always present as part of the operating cost. Warren did not want that road. He did not want to become a gear in a machine controlled by people who were not artists. Def Jam Cold and New York in Spirit offered what Warren needed most: a clearer legal structure, the chance to remain both producer and artist, and space to make his own musical decisions. It was a gamble against the current. A West Coast artist without heavy tattoos, without major beef, without extreme violence bringing the sound of Long Beach to New York. Warren knew he would be doubted, scrutinized, even dismissed. But he also understood that if he did not do this, he would remain the man standing behind someone else's story forever. Regulate the song. no one believed would become a hit. If Def Jam was the gamble, then Regulate was the all-in move. The idea for Regulate did not come from chasing a hit. It came from Warren G's habit of listening to old records. He immersed himself in funk and soul from earlier decades, until he stopped on a track by Michael McDonald, the song "I Keep Forgettin' Every Time You're Near." Regulate climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, not through gimmicks, but through staying power. The album Regulate, G-Funk Era exploded alongside it, transforming Warren G from a doubted name into a central figure of G-Funk. In 1994, the legendary label Def Jam Recordings was on the verge of collapse under massive debt totaling $33 million. Russell Simmons and Lyor Cohen, the label's power figures, were scrambling for a lifeline. The hit Regulate did more than succeed, it triggered a financial shockwave. Revenue from Warren G's debut album erased Def Jam's $33 million debt almost overnight, turning the label from a dying entity into a profitable giant earning tens of millions. Warren G was the one who laid the cornerstone for the revival of an entire empire. But the tragedy began when Warren G asked for an audit. The financial scandal of cooking the books. A stab from men in suits. While Warren G generated more than $100 million in revenue for the label, the actual money that reached his pocket was laughably small. Def Jam used complex contracts signed when Warren was still a kid with little understanding of New York law. They inflated production costs and created phantom marketing expenses to deduct from his royalties. Warren G bitterly discovered that he did not even own the masters to the songs he had created. He saved the company, yet the company owned his creative children forever. Feeling used like a money-printing machine, Warren G launched a do-or-die battle. He refused to enter the studio to deliver his next album on schedule. This was a heavy blow to Def Jam, which was desperate for another Regulate-level hit to keep cash flowing. Warren was not afraid to go public, exposing the inner workings of Lyor Cohen and Russell Simmons. He called them artists' predators. In retaliation, Def Jam used its media power to freeze Warren's career. Promotional budgets for his later projects were cut, causing his sales to drop sharply. Without this legal war that consumed both his youth and his money, Warren G could have stood alongside billionaires like Dr. Dre. While Dre had Beats and Snoop mastered branding, Warren G remained trapped in a web of copyright disputes for more than 20 years. Even in recent years, Warren G has bitterly shared online. They say, "I saved the company. So why haven't they given me my masters back? Let me actually live off what I built." And from here, Warren G's story begins to shift into a darker and more unsettling chapter. In hip-hop history, there is an unwritten rule. When an empire collapses, the real stories finally get told. And many of those stories are spoken from behind bars. Copyright drama. Suge Knight calls out Warren G from behind prison walls. Suge Knight, the former boss of Death Row Records, has repeatedly appeared through interviews, podcasts, and explosive recordings. Then in a moment that made the entire hip-hop world stop and listen, Suge Knight called out two names directly: Warren G and Russell Simmons. The accusations in Suge Knight's opening shot. Suge declared a shocking claim. The classic album Regulate, G-Funk Era, from 1994 was, according to him, a massive deception. He insisted Warren G did not write his own music, and that Snoop Dogg and Corrupt were the real ghostwriters behind the Triple Platinum album. Suge accused Def Jam boss Russell Simmons of manipulating paperwork, falsely crediting Warren G in order to withhold millions in royalties that should have flowed to Death Row. Suge did not stop there. He also spread personal smears. Dr. Dre once slapped Warren G just for using a phone in front of him. Once again, Suge attempted to revive the image of Warren G as weak a tag along riding on others' success. The thunderous response, "Don't lie on my name," no longer the calm regulator people were used to. Warren G finally exploded. According to TMZ, Warren abruptly left a boxing training session just to record a direct and furious response aimed straight at Suge Knight. "Don't lie on my name. Don't drag me into your scapegoat games anymore," Warren G shouted. Warren shattered the ghostwriting accusations. He admitted Corrupt helped on the song "Do You See?" and Snoop contributed to this DJ, but those were brotherly collaborations, not full ghostwriting as Suge claimed. As for the alleged slap from Dr. Dre, Warren laughed it off as cheap fiction. He stated clearly that his relationship with Dre was built on respect, with no violence involved, contrary to Suge's attempt to humiliate him. The classic twist: "I'm the one who saved your life." This was the detail that shocked audiences the most. Warren G did not just deny the claims, he flipped the narrative entirely by revisiting their street history. Warren revealed a truth Suge likely never wanted repeated. Warren G himself had pulled Suge Knight out of multiple life-or-death situations at nightclubs years earlier. "I always had your back on the streets. I earned my position with sweat and sacrifice, not through anyone's charity," Warren said. He insisted he never held resentment toward Suge, but his patience had finally reached its limit. A war with no end in sight. Buckle up. Suge Knight has recently regained full access to social media from inside prison. With the temperament of a caged predator, Suge is unlikely to stay silent after Warren G exposed his lies and reminded the world of that old debt. The hip-hop world is holding its breath. What evidence will Suge release next? Or is this simply the last desperate move of a fallen king clinging to the spotlight of the final survivor? One thing is certain: Warren G in 2024 is no longer the young man pushed aside in 1994. He is ready to step into the ring to protect the greatest legacy of his life: the name Warren G. And that is why, after more than 3 decades, the name Warren G is still spoken, not as a scandal magnet, but as a figure standing in the grayest zone of hip-hop history, the intersection of music money and silence. Despite being known as a clean image figure in 1996, Warren G became involved in a shocking controversy: the 1996 arrest, when the survivor nearly got caught. One night in June 1996, Hollywood was wide awake. As Warren's luxury car cruised down Sunset Boulevard, flashing red and blue lights suddenly erupted behind him. A routine traffic stop, no. At the time, the Los Angeles Police Department was aggressively targeting rappers as East Coast-West Coast tensions reached a breaking point. When officers demanded to search the vehicle, the air turned heavy. Under the driver's seat, they pulled out a fully loaded 9mm handgun, ready to fire at any moment. Warren G was handcuffed on the spot. Images of the peace-minded regulator being escorted into the Hollywood police station shocked the entire media world. Why would a millionaire, a man who constantly preached "regulate meaning control," the violence, be carrying an illegal weapon? Why did he need a gun? The answer was not to show power, but to survive. After the massive success of Regulate, Warren G became a walking goldmine. Old gangs from Long Beach and shadowy figures across Los Angeles began sending anonymous letters and blood-soaked extortion calls. They demanded a success tax. Warren understood street rules better than anyone. Friends of his had already lost their lives simply for letting their guard down. He could not trust private security or law enforcement, who frequently harassed rappers. Warren felt forced to arm himself. The moment Warren was arrested, top-tier lawyers were hired at staggering costs. His legal team exploited procedural flaws in the police search and presented evidence that Warren G was facing real and credible threats. They argued this was legitimate self-defense by an artist being actively targeted by criminal networks. In the end, thanks to his clean record and elite legal defense, Warren G narrowly avoided prison time. He received probation and a fine. But the story did not end there. By the late 1990s, West Coast hip-hop was swallowed by darkness. Gunfire, hatred, and raw aggression became the rule. Against that backdrop, Warren G's music felt almost defiant in its calm. A slap to G-Funk, when a genius became an outsider. Hardcore rappers from Long Beach and Compton began turning their backs on him. They dismissed Warren's smooth, polished G-Funk sound as trash music they mocked as something for white suburban housewives to play in grocery stores. Warren G was accused of trading street intensity for flashy pop charts. Critics sneered that he had softened a culture built on blood and rage. The isolation peaked when the brutal East Coast-West Coast conflict exploded, led by Tupac and Biggie. As the entire hip-hop world was forced to choose sides as weapons were metaphorically loaded, Warren G chose silence. Because he refused to release diss tracks aimed at New York Warren, G was labeled a coward, a traitor to the West Coast. At underground parties, his name was quietly removed from guest lists. He was no longer invited to major events, no longer featured on collaborative records with West Coast legends. Warren G suddenly became a lonely island in a vast ocean. Despite being blacklisted, Warren G stayed committed to his path. He once said, "I don't need to prove I'm tough by harming people or screaming insults. I prove it by surviving." The media turns its back. From expectation to labeling. From the late 1990s onward, the media tone shifted completely. Warren G began to be labeled a one-hit wonder, washed up and out of touch. At the same time, hip-hop was evolving fast. Beats became harsher. Images became more aggressive. Drama became the main fuel for staying in the spotlight. Warren did not move in that direction. He did not start feuds to grab attention. He avoided scandals. He did not attack his peers. As a result, he slowly faded from the center of pop culture, even though he continued releasing music consistently. Later albums like The Return of the Regulator in 2001 or In the Midnight Hour in 2005 still had loyal listeners, but they no longer created major waves. More importantly, Warren deliberately chose not to enter the image race. He accepted losing his hot status to keep his career stable, refusing to be pulled into battles where he had already seen too many people fall. That decision directly shaped how history would remember him, not as a king, but as someone who stepped away at the right time. Warren G did not collapse after Regulate. He did not become a mogul. He did not dominate hip-hop for another decade. But he survived, kept control of his life, and avoided being swallowed by the system. Look at the full picture of the West Coast in the 1990s. Tupac was killed. Suge Knight was sent to prison for the long haul. Dr. Dre had to leave the empire he spent years building and start over from scratch. In the middle of this graveyard of fallen icons, Warren G stands out as someone almost immortal. But his immortality did not come from surviving bullets. It came from a frightening level of clarity. Warren G was the only member of the original 213 trio who did not let the glow of fame burn away his humanity. Private life, the final winner. In a life or death game, while many peers chased wild parties and fleeting relationships, Warren G built something entirely different: a family. Warren G married Tenille Griffin in 1996. At the peak of his fame, Warren chose to put on a ring committing to the woman who stood by him when he had nothing. She witnessed the moments when Dr. Dre ignored him and the times when he was most alone. Tenille was not just his wife. She was a filter that protected Warren G from the traps of the music industry. When Regulate exploded and groupies surrounded him, Warren always chose to go home. Why? Because he understood one truth: all glory is meaningless if there is no one who saw you from the very beginning. 6 children, and the promise to never repeat the tragedy. Warren G has 6 children, 4 sons and 2 daughters. His oldest son, Elijah Griffin, is living proof of the family's values. Instead of following his father into the chaotic world of rap, Elijah became a professional football player in the NFL. Warren G grew up in a broken home at just 4 years old. That pain stayed with him so deeply that he swore his children would never experience abandonment. He showed up to every game, every parent meeting, no matter how demanding his touring schedule was. Warren G once said, "Being a good father is far harder than writing a #1 Billboard hit." Despite being a Long Beach legend, Warren G was extremely strict about keeping his children away from gang violence. He used his own life as a textbook. He told them about friends he lost. He showed them the scars of his past. All of Warren G's children grew up without any legal trouble. That is a rare achievement for a rapper's family raised out of a crime-filled pressure cooker. Many people ask why Warren G is not outrageously wealthy like Dr. Dre. The answer lies in his choices. Warren G refused to trade family time for risky billion-dollar deals or endless legal battles. He chose a quiet, upper-class life. His greatest passion is not luxury cars or diamonds, but cooking for his family. His love for barbecue was born from Sunday family gatherings. That is where he finds true peace, where he is not the G-Funk legend, but simply a husband and father tending the grill. When you look at the funerals of young rappers today, or the explosive divorce lawsuits of moguls like Dr. Dre or Kanye West, you begin to see Warren G's value. Warren G is the ultimate winner because he is the only one who kept his soul intact. He did not just survive the bullets of Long Beach. He survived the bullets of fame, keeping his home warm and intact. Life in 2025, the BBQ and clean food mogul. By 2025, Warren G is no longer a rapper chasing chart positions. At 54 years old, he is living what hip-hop calls the ultimate success. Wealth, freedom, a fulfilled family, and unshakable influence. No longer a side hustle. Warren G's food empire, Sniffin' Griffin's BBQ, exploded in 2024 and 2025. Beyond sauces, he expanded into seasonings and ready-to-grill products sold in major supermarket chains across the United States. He frequently appears on cooking shows and live streams, building the image of a friendly, stylish godfather who loves the kitchen. He successfully turned Long Beach barbecue culture into a multi-million-dollar brand. In 2025, Warren G is also a pioneer in using technology to protect his legacy. He continues working with legal teams to reclaim control of his original masters from former labels. He has officially licensed his voice and musical style for modern G-Funk projects using AI technology, but under strict oversight to ensure the integrity of the Warren G brand remains intact. Family remains Warren G's greatest pride in 2025. His son is now a stable presence in the NFL. Warren G is frequently seen in VIP seats cheering him on. In 2025, Warren G serves as a mentor to West Coast hip-hop. He spends time in his private studio guiding young rappers from Long Beach and Compton. He does not force them to be like him. He teaches them how to regulate their careers so they do not repeat the mistakes of those before them. Alongside Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, the trio maintains a strong brotherhood. After their historic Super Bowl performance years ago, they continue to meet through joint investments in technology and beverage ventures. Warren G is now the glue keeping these legendary relationships intact. If you see Warren G in 2025, you see a man in a silk shirt and sunglasses standing beside a barbecue grill at his multi-million-dollar home, holding a glass of wine and smiling. In the temple of West Coast legends, if Dr. Dre is the thunder god with godlike production and Snoop Dogg embodies street-born charisma, then Warren G is the calm, steady current. The man who regulated the heat of gang violence into a form of popular culture that captivated the world. Warren G's legacy is not defined by platinum plaques alone. It lies in redefining what gangster truly means and in saving an entire genre from self-destruction. Young artists today look at Warren G as a model of longevity. He does not need to be the richest like Dr. Dre. He does not need to dominate social media like Snoop. He is the most respected because of his integrity and timeless music. Do you appreciate Warren G? Leave a comment below. Like and subscribe so you do not miss the latest stories about hip-hop legends.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.